Hi everyone, welcome back to the Triumph Strength and Performance podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Steve DeNovi, and he's here to talk about some various coaching topics, including how his own system has developed over time, some things to keep in mind when you're trying to thrive as a powerlifting coach, some lifter psychology, and more. Steve is also Devin's coach and has been a huge influence on modern powerlifting, and he's best known for his content on YouTube and Instagram as the co-owner of Powerlifting Now. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, and check out our content on Instagram at Triumph S&P. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
So, first topic was more so how you have kind of like what your logic was behind initially starting coaching and developing that first system, for lack of a better term, and how you've developed that over the years and reasons for that coming into fruition in certain areas. Like the what inspired this question for me was like sometimes when I'm bored, I'll like go scrolling deep in your team page and I'll just kind of watch videos, and it's like even like times that you've shown your old programming, the way you write things is very different um now relative to before. And I'm sure that you've also like developed your system of communication over time and have had that be more systematic now. So it's kind of like very general, and there's certain areas that I think this question can go, but yeah, I kind of want to hear how like where that started and the reasons and logic behind getting that to where it is now.
Okay. Oh, are we live now, or is that what you were just saying? You were just
Yeah, no, yeah.
I thought you were just telling Andy what our first topic was. I didn't know that was like the first introduction. So
that was the yeah, go for it.
Okay, well, okay. So I'm trying to think back because obviously it's you. I'm probably forgetting more of what you've seen but I think something to understand is going into powerlifting coaching, I had already been in a situation where I had been managing staffs of 12 to 15 trainers for about 5 years. And there's a lot of carryover there because when you're a powerlifting coach, you are managing a staff, in quotes, of 20, 30, 40 athletes. And it's very similar. You're trying to educate them on what they need to do. Most of the people that powerlift have a pretty good baseline of exercise and fitness. Like they don't need to like know the bare bones of what a personal training client is. So it's a lot like managing trainers. And so I had a lot of operations and systems that kind of came from that. And I knew what needed to be done to kind of keep things on track, and also knew what needed to be done to not drive them crazy, because you don't want to overly manage a group of trainers. Like they want to go work. They don't want to be babysat all the time. There needs to be things that you're doing that helps them and educates them and gets what they need from a management perspective, but also lets them be allowed to do their job and have some autonomy there. So that helped. And then the other thing that helped, I think that was a really good decision on my part, is what would have been like 2015. There weren't that many what we'll call like professional coaching teams or organizations or coaches. There was very, very few. It was basically the strength guys, DeNovo Nutrition, and then RTS. Maybe I'm missing one or two more, but I worked with TSA. And one of the things that appealed to me about that is that they were a more formal, like professional coaching team. Like when you signed up with them, they actually had like a full-on liability and contract form. They had systems in place. They had professional spreadsheets and all the kind of stuff that kind of seems more mainstay nowadays. And so working with Hanny Jezarelli, I don't know if I still say that right to this day after like 7 years, but getting to see their systems and how they did things kind of helped to give me a baseline of what I liked and what I didn't like. And they did more of a weekly feedback model. I knew from that it was okay for me. I'm a pretty autonomous person. I didn't need someone telling me every single day feedback, so I was completely fine with that. But I also knew that I could see the benefit of more daily communication. So from there, I think I just kind of had a good starting point, and also just being type A and overly organized and overly communicative like I am. I kind of just already had ideas of kind of how I wanted to set things up. But with that, there was a lot of trial and error of I'm going to try something and let's see if it adds benefit to me or the lifters. And I'll try it for 2 or 3 months. and then it doesn't work, or it does work and I either keep it or I don't keep it. So I can't remember all the things I did, but like I remember I used to do, so Devin's familiar with the little weekly check-in email I send at the end of the week. I used to always respond with a full video to that. And it eventually got to the,
that's so funny.
And it worked when I coached like 10 people. But when you coach more people, I was like, I'm responding to every single one of these people daily. I'm then making it like a 5 to 10 minute weekly video for them. And usually I would be doing that on a Monday, which Monday is the day I really wanted to do most of my programming. And I was like, I'm doing so many of these videos right now, and I don't think the amount of time I'm putting into this is really worth what I'm doing. And so I stopped doing that. I kept doing the weekly check-in because I had a lot of athletes that like to be able to still do that. And what I found from that, it wasn't so much that they needed a response from me. It was that they just needed something to write out their thoughts in a way that helped guide them, because they wanted to give more feedback, but some athletes just aren't as in tune with like lingo and thought process. Like if you were to work with another like I coach another coach who knows exactly what I'm looking for, like they needed something to guide them, so it helped them just kind of put that on paper and kind of summarize their thoughts. So I kept that around, but I didn't do a video for it. I even at one point, to see if it would help, I put the weekly check-in thing that Devin knows about in your actual program. If you scroll down, it literally was in the program to fill out. And when I had polled all the athletes on would they like to try this, it was resounding yes, we would rather do this than the email. Guess what happened? No one did it.
Yep.
Absolutely no one. And can you take? I'll let you take a guess why that might be.
Because they don't see it and aren't reminded of it, and I don't know.
Bingo.
Like
on Fridays, they did not get a reminder email saying go fill it out. It was on their own accord to think I need to go scroll down to go fill that out, and no one did it. And so, yeah, I realized quickly that didn't work. The Friday email that they can expect every single week as a reminder, and then on that email, it's much easier to fill out than it is on the spreadsheet, worked way better. So I went back to that. Office hours is obviously something that I eventually came to. That's something I didn't do for a long time, and that's something I eventually implemented because I think it comes with the growing pains of like, I think every coach ever has done things when they first started that are not actually sustainable, and that's not a bad thing. You kind of have to over deliver value at first, and over, like you might be charging $75 but giving $300 something worth of value and the time commitment that you're doing, but you have to understand that difference in price is your marketing budget. Like you're putting in X amount of time, but they're only paying you $75. What you're really doing is allocating $200 to marketing, because if you are providing good service to this athlete, they're posting about it, they're talking about you, you need them to do that to be able to grow. And so you kind of have to over deliver on value at first to be able to kind of get that momentum, to get enough athletes that then you have some type of self-sustainability where you don't have to continually over deliver on value, and you can actually be worth what you're putting out there. So yeah, I think so much of what progresses is that you grow and grow and grow, and you start having to be more refined with things, because you can't coach 40 people with unlimited time to be able to get back to you and guaranteeing that you're going to respond in the middle of their workouts to every single person, being available at all times of the day when you've got a wife and it's 9 p.m. and we're trying to go to bed, and you get up out of bed and you go take a video on technique to respond to someone. Like there eventually has to be some type of boundaries. And that's not just powerlifting coaching. That's any business. And that's something I think we'll probably discuss here in a bit. But like when you own and run your own business, it's really hard to shut off. And you've got to create accountability measures that helps you to be able to shut off and have time to yourself. And that's a lot of what I think kind of happens. But yeah, I think a lot of over the years, it's just a lot of playing around with things that made sense. I try it out. I see if it adds enough value for what it's doing. And I would say a lot of times I see value, but I need to simplify it more. How can I be as simple as possible to get the information I need and to keep things where they need to be and create adherence without overbearing? Because you also don't want to ask too much of people. Like this is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be homework where they've got to fill out too much, and like, yeah. So hopefully that answers the question. if there's
Yeah,
anything
it
else
does.
leading that would be specific that you want to know about.
It's funny you say the videos about weekly check-ins because us three used to do like videos for people every single week. And that was like, I don't know, that was a decent while ago, like over a year and a half maybe. And it was like our roster sizes would gradually increase. And we were all three of us were it was definitely like for me, it was probably like a year and a half ago plus. But like we were also like working too outside of coaching. All three of us just coach now. But it was like we'd go to work, we'd be coaching, like replying to people at work. We'd still have to train, get home, and then we would have like 5 or 6 like video check-ins to make for people to watch. And then we ended up like I don't think anyone here does that anymore, right? Chris and
No.
Weekly check-ins. I think we all stopped those around the same time.
And
But
then I also have a form that I send out. I think Andy has one too, and Chris also has.
Yeah.
Andy puts his in his thing, maybe no, or is that your you have something linked in your sheet, Andy, right?
I have a couple things linked to my sheet. I don't do the weekly check-in form. That's just you and Chris.
Okay, right. But yeah, it's funny you say that, and it's like interesting how there's like similarity there because I feel like we definitely had that. I feel like any local coach, any coach who wants to like make this a thing needs to like over deliver, like you're saying, like
Yeah.
like almost just really, really impressing people for the price, and then people are like, oh, my coach is really good. They only charge this, and stuff like that. So
there's also a major component here of who you are coaching, and that defines what you do and how your systems progress. So one of the reasons I did that weekly check-in, because when I was newer and you're coaching 20 people who are not as adherent, they don't give as good of feedback, they're skipping workouts, they're more variable, I needed something to get them to communicate on a frequent basis. And at that point, I had more people who would fill out that weekly check-in because frankly, they just wouldn't give much feedback throughout. Versus now, I still put it out there if people want to use it, but I probably only have 2 or 3 people fill out a week because almost everyone I coach now is highly communicative. They're professional. As some people know, I tend to not take on younger lifters too often. I'm a grumpy old man at this point, and I tend to like people who have gone through stages to become more professional, which then changes the way I have to do things. Like if I was to go back and coach mainly 18 to 21-year-old lifters who are just getting into the sport, I probably would have to revert back to some different things of how I put together my structures and systems because they might need more accountability or more things to lead them or more things to kind of keep them on track than the people I do now. So it's partially over delivering on value, but it's also partially like who you're coaching at the time, defining what you need to do, and also being where you learn from on what you need to do. That's why it's good to experience a lot of different type of people that you work with. That goes back to my personal training background through online coaching background. Every client is a good client, even if they are terrible and you have to fire them after 6 months, because you learn things with them in the future of what you might need to do, things you need to put in place, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's where I think you're going to have a lot of differing things. One, based on coach personality, because coach personality is going to dictate a lot of how they're going to want to create a system of organization, but also to the types of lifters you coach. There's going to be, if I was only coaching a collegiate team, I would probably do things very different than if I'm coaching mainly 25 to 35-year-olds who are working professionals with family and kids.
For sure. One, Chris and Andy, I don't know if you guys want to like.
I was going to ask one question.
Yeah.
Would you turn down an inquiry purely based on age? Let's say you had open spots and someone submitted a really good inquiry that kind of checked the rest of the boxes, but they were 18 or 19. Would you just say, wait a few years?
Yeah, frankly, at this point, I would. I mean, there's a reason for it, and this is you can be an incredibly mature 18 and 19-year-old. I'm not trying to discredit that. I have coached people who are fantastic clients, but no matter who you are and how mature you are, that 18 to 24-year-old range, you are going to go through significant life changes. You are going to be a different person, and there's literally not a human being on this planet that from 18 to 24 isn't going to be changing. They might go through their first relationship. They're going through their first time through college. They're going through graduating college, first breakup, first real job, all this kind of stuff. And I'm just going to be honest. That's just not something I feel I have a strength at dealing with anymore. I don't think I'm the right person for that. I think there's other people who probably have better soft skills and would be more relatable to that at this point. I'm about to be 37. I have a very stable life. I'm not as relatable to that type of situation now. It's not only because that's not the right fit for me of who I want to coach, but I don't think I'm the right fit for them as well, even though they think they want to work with me.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I feel like the point that you brought up about the coach having to take accountability for kind of getting things out of an athlete, regardless of, whether that athlete kind of goes out of their way to provide good feedback or not. It's really interesting because especially at the local level here, with a lot of the more, I would say, like local coaches, I feel like you hear a lot of people kind of complain about like, oh, I have this athlete and, they might not be making as much progress because they don't communicate as well, or they don't do this as well. Whereas like that responsibility isn't necessarily on the athlete, it's also on your system as well. And if like you're not getting things out of people that you need to be getting through just like what we would think at this point is kind of just like, what you should be giving to begin with, I feel like going out of your way to do something like the form that you mentioned, or just like implementing those other systems to kind of pull that out of them is like a very kind of like interesting step that a coach can take to kind of take that extra step further to just improve their service.
Yeah. One of my favorite people in regards to kind of like entrepreneurship and small business is Alex Hermosi. I think he puts out really good stuff. And about a year ago, he tweeted something and it just resonated. And I screenshot it and I try and remind myself all the time because honestly, I felt like I was doing a bad job of this. And he said, as a business owner, you want everything to be your fault because if it's your fault, it means you are in control of it and can fix it. And that's what I try and do. That doesn't mean everything's always the coach's fault or the business owner's fault. The athlete or customer can be wrong, but you want it to be your fault because that means you can fix it. And I kind of look at that's what you're saying there, Andy, is like with all of these things, like you can look at it as, oh, this athlete sucks, they're not communicating. But you can also look at it as, what am I not doing to present them with the opportunities that works best for them to communicate? So, and within that, though, it is a dangerous thing that if you were to basically tailor communication for every individual athlete, if that makes sense. Like if every single person had their own system of how you do things, like for instance, I used to have some lifters like, oh, I don't want to send you videos. I just want to put it on a Google Drive. And then I had other athletes that wanted to just post on Instagram. And then I had some athletes that didn't want to text me on Facebook Messenger. They wanted to text me through text message. Just going on with a lot of different things. Like it is dangerous to allow too much individuality per person. And so it's more and more just trying to find systems that people that you coach can fit into, and you understand how to adjust that for them. It's literally just programming. It's the same thing as programming. Programming, you have a system of how you typically do things, and you are individually adjusting within confines of general rules that you believe in to make it work for them. You're likely not going to go so far off the spectrum that you're going to go full West Side with them because that's not what you do. But within the confines of how you program, you're going to tailor it to what you think their individual response is. And it's literally the same thing with communication systems, is you do need some set boundaries there for organizational purposes. But within that, you have to understand how to be able to create things in a simplistic way that a multitude of people can kind of file into and find their way to be able to organize themselves and communicate effectively within.
Did you have like a period before? You obviously did, but like, what did this period look like where before you have like your current system of communication laid out, where you have like the post-session feedback and whatnot? Like, say, however long ago, what did that look like for you? Like, did you just kind of like, here's your program, talk to me as is kind of thing?
So I always had it organized that one, everything was Google Sheets, and then two, I always did want a single medium of communication. I'm trying to think. I think at first it was text message until I got to like 8 or 10 athletes. And I'm like, okay, I need to separate text messages from my business and personal life. And that's when I went to Facebook Messenger, and I used Facebook Messenger for a really, really long time. And I was always big on the daily communication stuff. But it was a pretty long time before I was like, I want it to be post-session feedback. It was mainly because it got to the point where I literally remember the point where I realized it was an issue. Is I had 2 athletes who were working out at the same gym. FaceTime me, and I didn't answer. And they messaged me like, why didn't you answer? I was like, well, because I'm busy. It's Saturday at 4 p.m. They're like, well, yeah, we were like, instead of just messaging you during the workout, we just thought we'd FaceTime you can just watch it. And at that point, I was like, I've allowed too much. That this isn't their fault. I'm not faulting them for thinking this is something that they can do. I'm faulting myself for allowing myself to have so much freedom in how they can communicate that they think that would be something I would be willing to do at 4 p.m. on a Saturday. And that's when I started to realize, okay, I've got to change some things here. That was probably, I think that was in 2020, sometime around there. And frankly, 2020, I was very available because I had nothing to do. I had stay at home all day, every single day. I still pretty much do, but even more so then. And then that's where I started kind of saying, okay, I need to be more defined with that. Even with that, I wasn't great about keeping accountable with it. Like people would still do it. And instead of like telling them don't do it, I would just kind of like not respond until the end of the workout. And then probably about 2 years ago, I just started being really, really firm on just like, this is how things are done. And I think people respect that. If you do it in the right way, I'm pretty quick to be like immediately like, it's not like I let it go for 4 or 5 times. If it happens one time in a way that I don't think it should be done, I'll send a nice reminder, hey, this is the way I want it to be done, so that like habits aren't formed. So yeah, it just kind of developed over time, and a lot of that was just kind of trying. The more and more you coach, the more you have to keep working to find a good personal life and business balance, because that's just that again, take away the coaching. You own a small business, it is a constant battle of how can I be able to have a nice work-life balance. So yes.
So at this point, you can, you're probably pretty firm in the way that you do your communication. There's not a ton of leeway now. But for a coach that's just starting out, say they have like 5 or 6 clients and they're having trouble, either retaining clients or getting new clients, how much leeway do you think that they should be giving in terms of like having different modes of communication, or leeway in their programming, or just in general in their system?
I don't think there should still be too much leeway, because you're going to either 1, burn yourself out, or 2, get stuck in this for too long. Because that's what I got stuck in it for too long. Once you allow it, it's hard to get out of it, because then you're like, okay, if I start changing these things, are these people all of a sudden going to leave me? And so then you don't want to change it, because you think because I'm doing things a certain way, they're with me. And if I go change this stuff, now I'm going to lose athletes. And then you get stuck in this, and you do it for 4 or 5 years before you finally get the guts to be able to say, okay, this needs to stop. So I do think people should, when they start coaching, should be more defined with how they want to do things. They probably have to allow a little bit more leeway in some regards, but I think it's important to start out with something that's sustainable, so that you don't get into that point where you start kind of finding yourself in a place where you need to change, but you're too scared to, because everyone's already doing it, and it's hard to be able to kind of break those habits. Because that's a part too. Like it took a while for these, like the more strict setup I have now, to like fully be like universal, because I had so many athletes that were left over from the prior days, and it wasn't them being against what I wanted to do. It's just, this is what they did. Like they're just used to it. And so it took a while, and it was kind of like attrition, and to the point of where now I have a roster, but I think other than 3 people that are like fully within the time of these changes happening. Like they never experienced how it was before.
Yeah, I think it's probably a similar mindset with like increasing pricing, where you think that you're going to get like all of these drops, or that all these clients are going to leave you because I remember when I raised prices, I think from like 40 to 60 bucks a month, I was like sitting on it for 2 weeks because I was too nervous to actually send out the email and say everyone's going to be paying more. I think those changes that you make to your service, just because people are used to it, even if it's a completely fair change to make, there's still tough changes to make.
Yeah. And I think too, like some people may look and say I have strict protocols, but they're not only for me. I really do think it's best for the people I coach as well. I don't think it's healthy to sit on your phone and video every single warm-up set and top set and send to your coach in real time. Like, I don't think that's a healthy thing to do. You need to go lift. Like an NFL player isn't going to sit on his phone during practice for 5 hours and video every single throw he does and go watch it. No, they're going to go practice. Like, this is the time to lock in and focus and get off of social media and your phone and like go do the work. People are not, they tend to be too emotional in the moment. there's just a lot of things too that I legitimately think it benefits the lifters too. And so that's why I think I'm very strict on it. If it only benefited me and I thought it only benefited me, I probably would allow more leeway. But the fact that I truly do believe that, at least in how I do things, it benefits everyone I coach too, and creates good autonomy and helps them to learn to be independent and do things and make decisions well, to then be able to, because this is online coaching, it's not in-person coaching. They have to learn to be able to be autonomous. And if they're not going to be successful in an online format. So there's a lot of things that I do that I think are highly beneficial for the athletes as well, to make sure that they are becoming a good athlete.
Yeah.
Do you guys want
Sorry,
go ahead. There you go
because
first.
it seemed like you probably started powerlifting coaching before the really big social media boom. Is that right?
Yeah, for the most, yeah. Back when Instagram could only be a picture or a 15-second video. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So would you say that you've seen, I don't know if like neuroticism is the right word, but just core lifter psychology increase over time with social media becoming more, or powerlifting becoming more popular on social media, and people becoming more fixated on either like recording every set or like posting everything or watching everyone else on social media? Have you seen that, just like the negative relationship with training increase along with that increase in popularity?
Yes and no. Part of that comes back to probably who I coach now versus who I used to coach. Because frankly, I used to coach more neurotic and, like, in sense, not great athletes. And so like it kind of was the inverse relationship to me. Because social media can go one of two ways. I think if you're neurotic in general. Like, I don't think social media necessarily creates that. It can further that, but I think if you're neurotic and have issues in the first place, that is always going to be present. I had that before social media existed. But then social media kind of goes one of two ways. Either one, it hurts a person and makes them more neurotic or creates some type of unrealistic expectations, or two, it can help to actually keep someone really accountable. I mean, I think you guys might have it too, but there's a reason why on the application I have put in your Instagram handle. I probably won't coach you if I can't go to your Instagram and see your Instagram, because I'm sure you guys see this too. I can immediately go to someone's Instagram and have a pretty good idea of who they are as a lifter. Are they using this for clout? Are they using this? And can you see in the captions that every other caption is them having a breakdown? Or is it simply a training log? The training log part, that's if like one of the biggest tells for me in a good way is someone who consistently posts their training log without stopping at any point. What that means is like people tend, who are more neurotic or more inconsistent, you're going to see these blips of training and then a succession of posting training, and then blips of training and then a succession of it. Versus the people that I see are just very objective. They just post this training log and they're super consistent. I've seen a really high correlation with that, meaning that they're going to be a good and consistent athlete as well.
That's so relatable. Like,
Yeah.
there's been times when I've had an application, and we also have like the Instagram handle option on our forum, and I'll like go, and it's like so clear that they're like just such like that clout like Instagram lifter, and then it's like, and then maybe we'll follow through with an onboarding call, and then it's like very apparent that Instagram is reflective of how I'm guessing they're going to be as an athlete, and things like that. And I feel like it also shows up on the opposite end, where sometimes, like, obviously there's cases where it's like Instagram's Instagram, like you don't need to have one, but sometimes, like, someone will leave that part blank because we don't have it as a requirement, because obviously not everyone has Instagram, and they don't have an Instagram, or their Instagram is just like, maybe they don't have a lifting page, or they post very infrequently, and their last post was like from 3 years ago, and then those are like the more inconsistent people. So I've definitely seen like firsthand experience on both.
Yeah.
both
I mean, really, what Instagram is when you're applying for coaching is your resume.
Yep.
It's your lifting resume. And so, yeah, you're posting what is your lifting resume, and you can see a lot from how someone is on Instagram. So,
yep, for sure. It's interesting because it's like I feel like most people, like even myself, obviously, started Instagram like with the purpose of it being a training log. And it's like that's developed so much. Like where now like there's people who are trying to become coaches out of it, trying to like be this whole like influencer-esque thing and stuff like that. And I feel like the more consistent people are just like, okay, I made this to be a training log, and it is a training log still. You know what I mean? So it's interesting how it's like come that far.
This is unbiased, not just because we have romantic relationships occasionally. Angelo Fortino is my favorite popular powerlifting page on Instagram. He just posts his training log.
Yeah.
He posts every session, good, bad, simple, post it every single time.
Yeah.
Perfect. So,
Yep.
yes, obviously
like
not
a good athlete, like a good client.
Yep. So yeah, I don't know how I got on that conversation on Instagram, but yeah, I think that it shows a lot. And so yeah, know when you're applying to a coach, if every other Instagram caption is you freaking out, they're gonna see that.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to get into the lifter psychology part of things?
Did you want to let's run through business first. And
Oh,
then
right.
then we'll go through that. But yeah, kind of like pushing the timeline a bit further. Like obviously there's going to be a point where you have this kind of like a starting system and you just, you know, kind of catch your groove with developing that over time. When it comes to like the business perspective, what would you say were some of the more important focal points that you kept in mind to kind of get to the point that you are now? Like, I know you're big on tackling the local scene, and that's something that us three did and focused on very much so starting out too.
So this is less about like some strategy and more so about understanding. I've already said this multiple times. You're not becoming a powerlifting coach. You're starting your own small business. And one of the biggest issues you see in powerlifting coaches is they do not have the capabilities nor desire to run a small business. And probably one of the single most important, if not most important part about starting your own small business, whatever it may be, is you have to be a self-starter and self-motivated. Every single day when you wake up, no one's telling you have to work. No one's keeping you accountable. No one's saying you have to do this or that. No one's checking the quality of it. It is entirely every single day on you. And when you own a small business, you are working 365 days a year. So 365 days a year, you are waking up and you are deciding you are going to work and you're going to work hard. Not everyone, and this isn't even a negative, it's something that you need to think about as yourself. Not everyone is meant to run their own small business, and they are not a self-starter and self-motivated. They do better having someone managing them, whether that's the accountability factor, whether that's the guidance factor, whatever it may be. Is can you sit at a computer for 8 to 10 hours a day and continue to work and continue to be motivated no matter what? I mean, actually, I literally just saw it this morning. Alex Ramosi made a post, and I thought it was great. And did I screenshot it? I think I might have. Let's see. No, I forgot to. Gosh, what did it say? I'm blanking on it now. Oh, it was, if you find your passion, it doesn't mean you don't get to work. Something about like, if you find your passion, it doesn't mean you get to not work a day for the rest of your life. It just means when it really sucks, you still want to keep going. You have a more likely reason to keep going. There are going to be so many days that suck and you do not want to work. The last thing you want to do is do something. But guess what? You decided to start your own small business and you've got to work. And honestly, I think that's where a lot of the issues with coaching comes in that we see, where coaches are getting called out on communication and late stuff. It's not inherent, like, because the common thing you see is someone says, coaching is not hard. You just have to go respond to your people. Like, that isn't a hard thing to do. And even people who aren't getting overloaded on clients, seemingly sometimes it's difficult to respond to all your people. And it goes back to being a self-starter and self-motivated. Is every single day you have to wake up and decide, I'm going to respond to every message I get, and I'm going to write every program I need to do. It is very easy one day to say, yeah, I'm just not going to respond today. This is just, I just don't feel like I'm going to respond today. Guess what that leads to? It's very easy the next time not to respond, because you did it one time and nothing happened. There was no negativity. No one told you did anything wrong. Your athletes didn't say anything because it was just one time. And so you do it a second time, you get away with it again. You do it a third time, you get away with it again. Oh, this program's late, you get away with it. Not a single person is there to keep you accountable, other than maybe 6 months down the road, you have an athlete leave you because they're like, yeah, I'm not getting great coaching. Maybe you start to get a little bit of a hint, but you still got 34 athletes. That was only one athlete that left you. And you don't realize until 2 years later that all of this continues to domino until you become one of those coaches who are late on programs, you're lacking communication, half your roster has left you, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I think people really need to understand that that is a massive component in being a powerlifting coach, is that you have to be a self-starter and a self-motivator, because you are the only one in the morning that's going to decide if you are going to do what you need to do.
100%. Yeah. It's kind of the opposite with like receiving a coaching service, because it's like you have a coach to hold you accountable. But when you're the coach who's holding someone else accountable, there's no one higher than you. You have to like, you're your own boss, essentially.
Yeah. And not everyone's meant to be their own boss. It's a tough thing to do. That also goes back to the system stuff. Like, how do you create systems that keep you accountable, that you never will break? It is much easier to break your systems when you don't have any, and you don't have any like defined ways you do things. I have office hours until 6 p.m. I know that I'm going to answer all the messages that come in by 6 p.m. Barring I state otherwise, and I'll always say stuff like I probably over communicate with little things. Like I'll make a story post on my private page of like office hours end at 5:30 today, and I do that partially because I over communicate, but I do it partially because like I am so strict on not ever breaking one of those, because I know once you break it, it's way easier to break it a second time. Like I'm always going to try and do what I say, and I believe for the most part. I mean, I've definitely had times, like I'm sure you guys have had it, where like you go through messages and somehow one of them you clicked on and it got marked as read, and then you forgot about it, and then like a day later, holy crap, sorry. Like that is completely, that's going to happen. You're not going to be perfect, but it wasn't an intentional, I'm not going to answer this person today, or I'm not going to write this program. So yeah, I think that that's the hardest part about any small business or being a powerlifting coach, is that every single day you've got to be on. You don't get to be the person that gets to slack off.
Besides like just the onset of things, so obviously keeping up with everything that you just said, like I feel like there's other steps. And do you think like values change as the timeline progresses? Like obviously there's things to prioritize like off the bat, kind of like what I mentioned with the local, like tackling the local scene and stuff like that. But as you get more seasoned as a coach, like do you think like priorities shift in a way, or like do you think there's certain areas that hold more value than others as time progresses? Or do you think like off the bat everything is just the same as when you kind of become more developed, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it definitely changes, but it depends. Like I mean, I never set out thinking I was going to be some like popular powerlifting coach. Like I just thought I was going to coach people in Missouri, and that was going to be a lot of fun. It was never, I never meant actually to be doing what I'm doing. I meant to work more part-time and not actually do this. And in a great way, it happened. And not everyone that's going to happen to. You can be the best coach and work as hard as you can. There are just some things that kind of have to fall into your lap, or have the right routes or the right connections or the right things happen to you to get to that point. But because of like the progression I've had over the last 6 years, values have definitely changed. Like one of the staples of what I used to do was directing meets. I mean, I think I directed 16 or 17 or something like that, strength competitions between strongman and powerlifting and weightlifting and unsanctioned push pulls and stuff like that. Was a massive value for what I added to the community that drove kind of progress also in my businesses and just the networking of it. Eventually, because of growth, I kind of got away from that, because I was opened up more to being able to do content creation. And while meet directing is incredibly important, content creation in the way I feel like I do it, in my opinion, is more important. Not content creation as a whole, because you got thousands of people creating content, but like there is only a handful of people in powerlifting that actually have a reach like on YouTube for just like teaching people how to power lift, like myself or David Wilson. You got, if you take a step up, like an Alan Thrall and some of the more mainstream people, Calgary Barbell, like that. I was gifted an opportunity that only a handful of people in the entire industry have. And I don't take that for granted, knowing that that is a very important thing, because someone needs to be there to help these powerlifters who are developing and trying to grow and get in the sport a place to be able to go to. So I felt like that was my, like I had this value that I want to present opportunities to help grow powerlifting. And that changed as I progressed. And then it eventually transformed into Powerlifting Now. And frankly, with Powerlifting Now and that actually being revenue producing, unlike YouTube, where maybe I make $1,000 a year on AdSense, but that's not noteworthy to where like I could self-sustain off of that. Powerlifting Now presented me the opportunity, honestly, to focus more on coaching back again. Like, it's not like I ever didn't focus on coaching. That was always like tier one of things I had to do. But I honestly have less responsibilities now. I create content for Powerlifting Now, and I coach my athletes, and it's honestly gotten a lot more simplified. But I think the thing you always have to think about as a business owner, again, is you have your staple duties that you have to do. You have to respond to your clients, and you have to write them programs. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. But if you want to continue to grow, you have to do more than that. And so you have to figure out what opportunities are in front of me that I'm going to keep doing to grow. And the hardest time is when you're first starting out and growing, is you got to do more and more and more free stuff, more stuff to add value, things that are taking up your time and you're not really seeing that pay off, versus seeing that eventually pay off 6-7 years down the road, where now you can do less to grow. Because now, I don't want to say it's maintenance wise, but because of the things you did in the past, it requires less work now to maintain that same level of growth, if that makes sense.
Okay. Do you feel like I think this similar question was actually brought up on the podcast a couple days ago too, but like, how necessary have you found the whole content creation thing as far as maintaining and continually growing your business goes? Like, for example, do you think you would be doing powerlifting now without the whole years of content creation prior to that?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, that for so many reasons, that was completely needed. One, for me to get better at creating content, because you get better and better the more you do it. But probably two, and even more so, is you've got to leverage a following. And this goes back to like what I talk about a lot with worry about local stuff. Don't worry about social media. Social media is just your tool to leverage what you already have. Too many people like hop on social media with 500 followers and think that like they're somehow going to do anything with that. You've got to build a following first before you can actually leverage that monetarily. I mean, I did so much free stuff, free programs, free videos, free blogs, free Instagram posts for years and years and years and years and years to build enough of a following to the point where I said, okay, I can actually leverage that now. That the program is in particular a good example. I released one in like 2020 and it did well. Like at that point, I could have said, I'm going to start charging for programs, and I could have done okay, but not as good. Because let's say there was 1,000 people doing the program at the time. Yeah, I can make money off of that, but the ceiling of that is not very high. It's 1,000 people. That's not enough to really truly make a ton of money off of selling programs. So I was like, I'm going to release another free program. That one really took off. I don't know how many people run it. I know that my website page had 30,000 hits to that program last year. That doesn't mean everyone who went to the website uses it, but that's also just the website. That's not the YouTube page. That's not Lift Vault. I think it's possible 5 to 10,000 people have downloaded that program. Think about how much bigger of that following that is to leverage now. Or think about when I started YouTube, let's say I had 1,000 subscribers, like, okay, perfect. I've got 1,000 people. Let's start charging people now for these videos. Only probably 10% of those people are actually going to sign up and pay for it. So I have 100 people paying for these videos versus now I've got 15,000. We have 1,500 subscribers on Powerlifting Now. That's not all of those are from me, but that's 10% of my YouTube subscribers. That I can leverage that. That actually is making us money. So you've got to understand that, like, you might even get to a point where you think you can make money off of something, but it's not the right point yet. You need to wait until that tipping point really happens to where now you have like something that has a much higher ceiling of potential before you actually leverage that as a business opportunity.
Which avenue do you think has been the most helpful for you in terms of content creation and social media? Was it YouTube or was it Instagram or was it something else at the beginning?
You beginning Instagram,
Yeah.
because like Instagram is just where powerlifting is at. Like if you're not on Instagram, that's where it starts. With that being said, YouTube undoubtedly was the best ROI. Now, I had to heavily use my Instagram to get people to go to YouTube. I was shocked when I started my YouTube channel. I mean, I don't know how many Instagram followers I had. Let's say 5,000 at a time. I was shocked that I had like, after a couple of videos, I had like 200 subscribers. I was like, I've been making all this Instagram content forever, and I can only get 200 of these 5,000 people to go watch my YouTube videos. But I was I didn't do it for subscribers. I did it because I was like, these are the videos I want to make for my athletes anyways. And it's a lot easier just to put it out there and send it to them versus trying to make it individually. As well as, even with like 200 subscribers on YouTube, every video I did, I was getting like 1 to 2 people reaching out for coaching. Versus Instagram, it would take 4 or 5 posts to get one person to reach out. YouTube just had a much higher ROI, and I think a lot of that is because of the personal connection. You see my face. You like, before I did YouTube, a lot of it was I was Angelo's co-host, I was Sean's coach, or I was the PR's performance guy. No one knew what I looked like, and no one knew my name. And YouTube really put the personality, I think, to it, along with 2 white lights to an extent, and a face to it. But YouTube is 100% the gold mine if you can get traction there. The issue is it is by far the hardest to get traction on. It is really difficult. Frankly, I don't know if I would have gotten to where I am today if it wasn't without coaching Sean and him posting my YouTube channel and his caption on one of his videos when he said he got a new coach. I think if you look at my YouTube analytics, it was like woo, and it just like immediately spiked like 1,000 something subscribers. And then guess what? When it spikes to something 1,000 something subscribers, YouTube starts promoting your videos more, and then it escalates from there.
I was part of that spike. That's how I found your YouTube, is when Sean posted it.
Yep. 100%. That's where I say I mean, it's not complete luck that he reached out to me. He reached out to me because of some of literally because some of the Instagram posts I made. He was impressed by it. Specifically, he really resonated when I did the distance traveled deadlift post and some other things. And so he reached out to me. And so there was work I did that he reached out to me, but there's an element of luck there that like he spiked everything. Like it took away like 3 years of work in immediately coaching him and like what he brought like following wise. So
do you think that's been your most impactful post, is the distance traveled one?
No gut cut for sure.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. In the sense of maybe the people I work with, the distance traveled was a pretty big one, because I think that was maybe the first thing I put out that really got traction, was maybe me bringing a new idea. Like, I'm not saying I invented the idea. There's probably someone that discussed it, but like that was the first time I saw that put out there in a more formal manner. And I think maybe being able to actually contribute new thoughts was really important, because when you do that, that kind of puts you on a different tier in the sense of like what people look at you as the powerlifting coach. You're not just putting out what other people have said in a different manner. You're literally now contributing new things to the space. But no, the gut cut. I never would have thought I would be answering questions on poop on a weekly basis, like, and that be my legacy. I had a comment on YouTube the other day, and a guy was asking me how to troubleshoot the fact that he works in the morning, so he doesn't have to time to poop until the afternoon. And I was like, dude, I don't care when you poop. Like, poop when you want to, man. I don't have a good answer for your poop timing.
One more thing I want to add to that, and then we'll segue to the psychology talk, is with the whole idea of like getting the audience, then using the social media to leverage that. Something I know all 3 of us have seen is like a lot of people will make the mistake of not doing that, where they'll start from like where you need to end, and they'll have that like they'll use that social media like right off the bat and rely so much on the whole content creation, and won't put their eggs in the baskets of like what you need in the first place, like creating a good service and holding true to that service and learning more, and creating good relationship with their athletes. Like these things like that should by logic come first, from what I think, again, all three of us have seen, tend to like be neglected because people feel like the only way to grow is really make informational content, buy a fancy camera and start posting reels and stuff like that. And in reality, it can be effective to like help push your expertise further and just, basically like you kind of get what I'm saying. Like, people forget to focus on the important things first. And I feel like that's what we've seen. And I feel like that kind of ties into what you're saying as well. I'm sure you've seen that too.
Yeah, and one of the things, I haven't said it on the podcast, but I mentioned it before. This is all really fresh on my mind because I literally just wrote a 46-page outline about how to establish yourself as a local coach. A massive chunk of that is networking. And I think that's something, and maybe I'm being an old head here, that I think is somewhat of a little bit of a lost art with the younger generation because of social media. Like, networking to the younger generation is social media, and that's not necessarily the case. One of the things that, in hindsight, probably helped me a lot when I started full-time powerlifting coaching, I had already been in the Missouri fitness space for like 7 or 8 years, and I was very well connected. Like, I knew all of the managers of all the other gyms, in particular within the state of Missouri supplement. I'm sure you guys have heard of First Form supplements. They're kind of, unfortunately,
shop, yeah.
Yeah, we all worked at the same supplement shop.
Okay, so First Form was Supplement Superstore's brand. Supplement Superstores existed before First Form, and that's now that's they dominate Missouri in sense of supplement stores. I was incredibly well connected with them. I did so much with them with events and networking and all that. I mean, they sponsored every event I've ever hosted. They had people come compete. They always promoted it. I always did stuff for them, was sending them people. Like, that was huge. Like, when I moved to Springfield, I learned later on that one of the employees told me when I moved to Springfield, literally all the employees of Supplement Superstores in Springfield were notified that I was moving there and that I was very important to be able to network with. And one of the things I said in this outline when eventually the video comes out is I say over and over, make yourself irreplaceable. Make it so that if you disappear, people are going to be like, where did this person go? This is a loss in this community space because they were something that was a staple. And so I had a huge network. I had a network of people I knew in St. Louis because I was involved there. I moved down here and I already knew some people. And that made it a lot easier when I got into the space because I had such a huge network of people. And even when I got into the space, I kept networking and networking and networking. And the thing is, sometimes when I say this, people are like, or kind of talk about like talking to people and like I'm not outgoing. I'm not either. I probably appear that way on social media because I have a good social media personality, and I'm oddly a good public speaker, even though I hate talking in public, like to groups of like people. When I do public speaking, I just pretend like no one's there. Like that's how I do it. But either way, I'm a very big introvert. How I network is I do stuff for people. I'm not a person like my wife. She could go into a powerlifting meet and make best friends with every single person there just by talking to them. She used to do that at nationals. I would come home and talk about some people. She's like, "Oh yeah, I met them." I was like, "How did you meet this person? Like, you were just in the crowd." She's like, "Oh, I saw them. I went and started talking to them." I was like, "Okay." My wife would be great at that. She would be a great medical sales rep or like real estate, talking nonstop. I'm not. How I build network is I provide value for other people so that they feel that I have a worth to them. So I go and help some other coaches handle at meets for free. I go and direct meets for gyms. I'm not going to go through all the things, but you don't have to be outgoing and well-spoken and talk to people if you can just go offer value to them by doing stuff for free for them. And you'll do a lot of that. And some people will never return that. You'll never get a return on that. But if you do it enough, you'll create a network of people that they want to do stuff for you. They are going to talk positively about you. You're the person that they're going to go to when they need help. And then when you reach out for help on your own, they're going to immediately say yes because they know how much you did for them without expecting anything in return. So yeah, I think one of the biggest things I would say is just do stuff for other people. Just find ways to do stuff and add value, and you'll find that it'll come back around to you. That's networking in summation. Just do stuff for other people.
Do you guys have anything to add, or do you want to transition?
We can transition.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm good.
So one, actually, this is actually a funny way to actually segue, because I know there was this one time when you it was either an Instagram story or something, um, or maybe you just told me directly, but someone asked like, what is the most like impactful YouTube video or most important YouTube video or something along those lines? Then your answer was your lifter psychology video. And I'm curious how you came to realize the importance that like catering to a lifter psychology has, if that makes sense, and what lifter psychology means to you in the first place.
Yeah. So that the one issue, that video, I did it so early on, it probably wasn't a good video. I literally have no idea what I said in it. That was like 5 years ago, and I've never rewatched it. But I wasn't as good at creating content then, and probably one of the reasons it didn't resonate well is I probably wasn't good at articulating as well. So it's kind of a video I want to redo. But probably goes a little bit back to personal training and maybe even my background. Like I've got a minor in behavioral psychology. That's always been something that I think is incredibly interesting. Almost all of my own personal reading that I do is on behavioral and social psychology. Basically, why do people do what they do? Because that's marketing in a nutshell. Like I actually learned very little in all my marketing classes. I learned so much more learning about behavioral and social psychology, because that's what is marketing. Is why do people behave like they do and why do they make the choices they do? And then once you understand that, you know how to be able to market to them and understand like their behaviors and whatnot. So I think it's just always something I knew that was important, and that everyone has, whether they know it or not, has a lot of underlying reasons why they behave the way they do, and they don't even know that's the reason. But personal training is way more soft skills approach. You can frankly not have a very good idea of what to do from a fitness perspective and still be an incredibly good personal trainer if you understand the soft skills and the psychology of personal training. And you have to understand every single person. You're trying to figure out, how can I make this fun and motivating for this person to want to do this? Because every single one of them was different. That applies to powerlifting too. The good thing with powerlifting, and people are more adherent. They want to be at the gym. They usually want to go lift. And so the fun part about powerlifting versus personal training is you spend a lot less time just trying to get them to go to the gym. So they're going to go to the gym, but that doesn't mean they are going to perform things in the way you want. Because again, this is online. It's not in person. You don't get to be there to be able to tell them exactly what to do and see how they're doing it. And so, I think part of, I don't know if at this point this is why I was thinking, but I definitely know now, there's certain coaches that their programming is a bit more vague. Like it's not very directional. You'll have 10 athletes do that program, and all 10 athletes will do it differently, but they'll be successful. So you can't fault the program. You have to look at, and being vague, you have to look at, there's actually a genius within this, that almost being vague allows the athlete to self-align how they would do things. And then you got to take from that, okay, the way they want to execute it matters, whether that's because that's what they actually need to do from a physiological perspective, or what actually allows them from a psychological perspective to be able to execute training in the way that is most productive for them. Some people, if you go give them 4 hard sets in a row, are going to not be motivated. They're going to hate it. It's something that they're not going to be able to mentally tap into doing 4 hard sets, versus you can give someone else 4 hard sets and that's what they want to do. They are very consistent. They can perform all the time the same way. And so I think the more and more I coached, the more I found that like most of what individualization was not some like crazy difference in response. I think most people generally respond to similar things to an extent. Now, there's obviously leverage factors and distance traveled and all the kind of stuff I've talked about. But I think within a general framework, that's why 5,000 people can run my free program and the majority of them see success to an extent. Like you can, and why there can be 500 different coaches doing 500 different ways of programming, and we all see most of them in general getting stronger. There's general staples within what we need to do to get stronger, and as long as those are met, you're probably going to get better. But the difference ends up being is more so how the lifter kind of internalizes the execution within their mind, and how you can get every set to be the most productive. And so that's kind of what I look at, is like, if I've got to do 5 sets of squat and then 4 sets of bench and then 3 sets of deadlift, how can I organize this to be the most productive for this lifter, versus basically putting it in a spot where we start seeing some sets being worthless or disproportionately fatiguing or disproportionately hard or not executed well or not enough focus. Like, it's my job as the coach. It goes back to control everything you can control, rather than saying the lifter needs to always format to what you want them to do. It's how can I fix this under my control to get the athlete just to do what I want them to do.
Do you feel like there are areas outside of programming that you try to harness psychology in? Like, for example, maybe like giving feedback or something, or do you explain technique a certain way for people who kind of have certain personalities and things like that? Or is it mainly a programming thing for you?
Oh no, I mean, that's the soft skills part. And everyone's going to be different there, because everyone's different. I mean, look at football coaches. They're going to have the ones that are just going to cuss them out and scream in their face, and then you have more of the coaches coach who are more relatable. Like, and to an extent, you need to individualize that per athlete, but also to an extent, an athlete's coming to you because they already kind of, especially like in my position where I'm very like, it's out there. If you don't, like, you should know who I am at this point. Like, I don't think there's any secret of, like, if you are coming to be coached by me, like how I am. And so people who, it's a bit easier at this point, because people who reach out to me generally are reaching out to me because they resonate with me personality wise. And so it's likely I don't have to tailor it too much. It's going to work because they see how I am, and that's what they resonate with and want to be coached by. But yeah, I mean, it's all psychology. This goes back to personal training too, was all psychology. There were so many little things I did and tricks you do to be able to get someone to be adherent. Like, if I go back to personal training, I'll use the examples there because I think it's almost a little bit easier. I'm not thinking of I can't think of some good examples right now off the top of my head, but like personal training, 2 specific things I did that a lot of other trainers I saw didn't do that I thought was incredibly important. One, I saw a lot of trainers, when they get someone new coming to the gym who was nervous, they were very anxious, this was a very uncomfortable spot to be in, they kind of coddle that. I refuse to do that, because if you coddle it, you let them know that's okay, and their thoughts are okay in being nervous and like uncomfortable. 99% of people walking into a gym the first time who are nervous and are uncomfortable, that is entirely self-inflicted. No one has made them feel that way. We all know that the majority of people in gym settings are very encouraging and very nice. We're not sitting there looking at the person who's first working out and staring at them like they're an idiot. That's not who we're looking at. But they think that's the case. And I was very big on not coddling that and making them think that was true, because then they continue to think it was true. I would do the opposite. I would not ignore, I don't know where to best put it. I would pretend like that was a non-issue. Like, for instance, some of the trainers would always make sure to weigh their clients in a different room away from everyone else. I would weigh them in front of everyone else, because I wanted them to get away from this mindset that they had to be nervous or uncomfortable, as well as I would utilize that to my benefit. When they were down 3 pounds, I'd say, hey, Chelsea, look, Sam's down 3 pounds. Like, I would always try and invite everyone in to be part of their success, so they knew more and more that everyone was on their side. When someone would hit a big set, like a really cool, like fun PR, I'd go get another trainer and show them real quick. Like, I would literally do that on purpose, because I wanted them to know everyone was there to support them and not coddle the idea that they should be nervous and anxious. So, what was the other thing that was big? Oh, the other thing that was huge on, maybe this is a bias towards strength, but I always, like, the hardest part about personal training was the fact that getting people to eat correctly. That was by far the hardest part. I hated that. Absolutely hated it. It was terrible. I basically ended up finding that the best way to get someone to want to eat healthier was to get them to want to be at the gym. Because once you're at the gym, then you actually want then you start realizing that, oh, it would be better to eat healthy now that I'm actually in the gym. And so my entire goal when I would first start with anyone wouldn't be about necessarily improving their eating. It was, how can I get them into the gym 3 times a week and having fun? And what's the best way to have fun in the gym? If you're seeing notable progress. And what's the best way to see notable progress in those first 3 months? Get stronger. Because in the first 3 months, even if their nutrition was great and they're coming to the gym, the body changes aren't going to be crazy yet. they might see the scale go down, but losing 10 pounds when you're 40 pounds overweight is not a notable change. They're still going to look in the mirror and not be happy with what they see. And so that's not necessarily in the short term this motivating reward. So I would hound on the fact that I had to make the gym fun and I had to get them enjoying that first before I worried about anything else. So like I said, that I went on a tangent for personal training, but you have to, it applies to powerlifting coaching as well. Just understanding everything is about behavioral and social psychology, whether you realize it or not.
Was there like a certain moment where you realized the importance of psychology? Like, for example, I know the accessory video on Powerlifting Now, and obviously from firsthand with how you program accessories, it's very intentional and you keep it so what's in the sheet somewhat like elicits how you want someone to execute, kind of like you were talking about. Was there like a certain moment that specifically came to you, if that makes sense, or was it just kind of like a gradual thing over time?
I think probably the thing that was I can look back on the most notable is when the top set back down approach became more and more popular. Because when I first started, that wasn't necessarily the popular thing. I never did that when I first started. It was always like you did a 3x8 and you added 5 kilos each week to that 3x8 or something. I think when that became more popular, you saw such a differing response to how people executed it and like what would happen on the top sets versus the back offs. And I think that's when I started to really realize this wasn't a top set versus back off fatigue physiological response. It was entirely a psychological response. And that's when I started to realize that there's more to this than just putting a top set and back downs.
Yeah, for sure. Were you gonna say something or no?
Sorry, I coughed and I was muting myself while I was coughing, so it's probably heard.
I thought I heard Chris mumble.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how often do you find yourself programming around what you perceive the athlete's effort to be? Like, if you think, like, you just have a feeling they're not trying hard enough with their accessories or trying hard enough with a certain thing, do you ever program things just for the sake of being hard?
On the accessories, yes. I think I probably did. I've never really done that on the SBD work because I think there's an inherent risk involved if that gets too hard or something goes wrong there, because there's a higher fatigue and injury risk when you're doing these heavy compound movements. So yeah, with the accessories for sure. I mean, this comes back to my experience. How familiar are you guys with dog crap?
Not really.
Have you ever heard of it?
I've heard of it, but I couldn't tell you much about it.
This is so sad. I might have to hop off this podcast. So dog crap training is still the most fun I ever had in my entire life working out, bar none. Dog crap. Are you familiar with Dorian Yates HIIT style training?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Dog crap is the style of that. You do one set to literal utter failure. And like what you think is failure is not failure. Failure is literally like you do one set of bicep curls and it literally takes you 5 minutes before you can breathe again. And bicep curls. Like I'm talking like literal and utter failure to where like you feel like you're going to pass out. It would take like 45 minutes after a squat set to be able to stand up again. So knowing that and how I trained, it was really beneficial in understanding techniques of forcing people to try harder on accessory work. And so, yeah, I think accessory work is where I like to do that if I need to. At this point, I don't think I have as much of an issue there because of just the type of people I coach and who reach out to me. I don't think I have as much of an issue of people wanting to do that. Yeah, just creating up intensifiers like with accessory work to make them like die in a good way. Like in a safe way, they need to feel what like utter failure is. Because then once they feel that, they know the feeling then. And that they don't need to feel that 100 times. They just need to feel that a couple times. And then they know what that actual limit is. And so when you say, hey, you're sandbagging, they know what the difference between sandbagging and utter failure is. And I think that's the issue with most people is they don't really know what true failure is. And once they can understand that, it makes it so much easier to describe that. As well as, I mean, fun little thing, like I've kind of mentioned this, but like weighted dips, weighted push-ups, fun little pendulum squat thing I'm doing now. That is all very purposeful in kind of pushing, or like the belt squat. Like the tough part with accessories is you don't have a lot to relate to. And so if you can pick a movement and kind of popularize it even within powerlifting, like weighted dips is a great exercise, but it's not the end all be all. But if everyone's doing them and they can start comparing each other and it's motivating, you see this person doing X amount of weight and you like see your buddy do it, like you got to find fun ways to kind of do that. So I do that 100% purposefully. Like it's not like, oh, I'm just going to copy and paste. It's that once I find something I think I like and I think is going to be motivating, I'll get a lot of my athletes doing it for the reason that they can start. Then I'll create battles. I'll purposely do it. Like even if they don't do it, I'll start calling them out and be like, hey, Devin, yeah, Matt did more than you on weighted push-ups, and that is very purposeful. Lifter psychology. Like
I'll do the same thing. I'll do it with myself and my own athletes. I'll say I'll dip more than you. Yeah.
So, and then Waskar was sandbagging pendulum squat. So I got to let my weak self beat him and let him know that like he is. Yeah. So yeah, it's all fun stuff. You got to understand the people, and you also like the fun. One of the reasons I like powerlifting coaching is it not all, but most people who are gravitating towards powerlifting have somewhat of a similar mindset, that they have a competitive aspect to them that you can leverage in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's different with each people. Some people you can just literally be more blunt and say you suck and like just not be very nice, and they respond really well to that. Some people you got to be a little bit more like subliminal with it and like poke a little fun of like, oh yeah, my 74-year-old lady did 40s on Bulgarian split squats yesterday. That's funny, you're only doing 45s. Like just little fun things and little blips and fun little personal shots, and like, oh, all of a sudden they did 70s next week. That's super cool. But yeah, I posted on purpose. I post Kate doing 40 pounds in each hand for sets of 15 on Bulgarian split squats purposefully, because if she can do that, for sure that guy who squats 600 can do that.
Yeah. I remember. I assume you, or maybe you do know him, Steve. Larry Hinson, Lawrence Hinson. He would train at our gym, and he's a 90. He was a junior champ 90, and he was doing like I don't know, he was using like the 60s on Bulgarians, and he squats 620. So I would try to always outdo him to get him motivated to do more. But it's funny when you see these people that are like, dude, I know you can take like the 130s on Bulgarians. They do this now, but they're doing like the 45s.
Yep. That's also, I mean, this is getting off tangent, but that's also a team builder. That's a way to get your team connected, especially in the online realm when I don't have anyone like near each other anymore. It used to be a little bit easier because you have these pockets of 5 to 6 athletes in certain gyms. Very easy to kind of create a team culture with that. You're all going to the same meets together. But now with me, everything's dispersed. That's my fun way to kind of create like a little bit of team unity, is like creating these little battles and having some fun there, and like getting each athlete a little bit of like their comparative rival within the team to have some fun with. So yeah.
I think I started picking that up from you fairly quickly, and there was this one point in time when I had a couple guys who were doing like, they were just like really tempoing their bench, and I was like, oh, like Peter tempos his bench like crazy, and you guys are like easily the 2 people I coach who have the most honest tempo bench. And then like within a day they started tagging each other in their story and stuff like that. Obviously you don't want to tempo it for a whole minute, but you get the point. Like I thought that was cool, and I definitely saw like like you said, everything's online, so it also I think just helps avoid like clicks, not clicks, but like helps make it very clear that it's like, hey, I don't only coach these 4 or 5 people at this gym. I coach all around, and it kind of helps like create that sense of unity, especially like starting at the local scene, because me, Chris, and Andy all go to the same gym, and started coaching a lot of people at that gym and within 2 states, and then had to branch out from there. So it also helps just like in that sense too.
Yeah, for sure. And finding something one of the best ever was Joey Flex. They had 100 lifters and had probably the best community, especially, I mean, he still has a great one, but like it was like the model 2018 to 2020. And it was all based around anime and the Avengers. He just created this community around anime and Avengers. And if that's what it is, awesome. Just find ways to kind of create connections and personal relationships. I've got some of my athletes who play video games, and we connect in that way. I got some who are in the sports, and I'm gonna make fun of how terrible the Eagles are, even though the Bears suck even worse. Yeah, you got to find those things to create fun personal relationships that are within professional boundaries. So that's a key there, is within professional boundaries. It's it's especially locally, it's harder to control that when you're seeing each other all the time and sometimes you're hanging out. But yeah, that's an important aspect of like how to create fun personal relationships and interconnection between people and how you relate within professional structure.
Yeah. And this is maybe a little off in a tangent, but going to the whole accessory work and trying hard conversation, how how do you view RPE? Like, do you view RPE very much so on an RIR perspective, even with accessories? Um, or are you kind of more along the lines of, say, someone's running like a 4 or 5 week block and you're more so looking at like, oh, I want this rough load range to move like this for this week, even though it might be a little over under the RP for the day. Is that different on SBD work versus accessory work? Where accessory work, you're trying to look more for like if you're programming something at RP 9 to 10, you're really looking for like the hard to breathe for 3 to 5 minutes on a bicep curl RP 10.
So couple things there. I'll start first. So I still always relate RPE to RIR. Almost always. With that said, with accessories, and Devin, I told you this on the first call, I consider it on accessories to be a little bit more of a range. In large part because you don't have clear defined ideas of what you can do for a set of 10 on a machine chest press on the Sorinex machine versus the hammer strength machine. Like you don't like you're not going to know like we know on SBD when we have very consistent lifts that we know the exact percentages to, and we like it's going to be consistent of what we know is going to be within around an RPE 7 or 8 or whatever it is. So it's a range, and I always tell people it's a range of up or down 1 RPE. Start more conservative towards the early in the block, push it a little bit more later in the block. I don't mind if you overshoot it, but I still do mean RIR with that, which is why I'm programming tricep accessories at 9 to 10 RPE, but I program maybe a hack squat at 7 RPE because 7 RPE on a hack squat is very different than 10 RPE on a tricep extension. And then to answer the second question, I don't, whenever I program 10 RPE, I don't actually, or 9 to 10, I usually say 9. I actually rarely ever program 10 because I think I always say 9 because frankly, in the world of powerlifting, 9 means 10. Like it's kind of like the safety net of like, no, if you think 10, that means you're going to fail more often. I like, so it's my safety net. I always do 9. That's just that's a psychology thing too. Of like always saying 9, knowing I want that safety net there. But I don't think I have anyone doing dog crap stuff. Like true, like when I say utter failure, I mean, when I used to do a set of squats, it would be 12 reps and I would hit RPE 10, like actual RPE 10. I would then stand there for 15 seconds, do another rep. I would stand there for 15 seconds, do another, and this would go on for 4 minutes until then I would have to have someone help me to get a rep or two. And then I would literally fail to where I'd fall over and I'd have to drop the bar. Like that's an interesting discussion I actually had with data-driven strength because they're familiar with that as well. Is like RPE 10 is different based on what you're doing. And one of the biggest things is the cadence of the reps. And so when I am saying RPE 9 or 10, I am assuming that is with the cadence of the reps being consistent. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Versus if you want to talk about and no forced repetitions or anything like that, because you can like if you ever seen it, I sent to you afterwards. Ben, do you know who Ben Bruno is?
No,
Sounds familiar.
I don't know.
He's now a celebrity trainer. He actually was a pretty notable strength and conditioning coach. He's trained Jack Eichel, who's in the NHL right now. But now he trains he trains Justin Timberlake, Chelsea Handler, Justin Verlander and his wife. I'm blanking on her name. He's a celebrity trainer now. Either way, though, I literally came across him because he did dog crap. He's also the only person I've seen a video of do more on Bulgarian split squats than me, which is still painful to me. But if you go watch his videos, he will do like 76 rep sets of leg press. And after like 20 reps, you're like, he's hit RPE 10 and he will go for 7 more minutes. And literally just every rep is him screaming and grinding out another rep and then waiting for 15 seconds. So that's what I mean is like rep cadence plays a part. So when I think RPE 9 or 10, I'm saying that's with a consistent rep cadence of 1 rep, 2 rep, 3 rep, 4 rep with no like distinct over rest. Maybe you're resetting to an extent to like, okay, I'm going to lock out, go back down, but not like literally taking 15 seconds to like do like an active loaded rest.
Yeah.
Andy, Chris, did you guys have anything to add, or do you want to go to the last topic?
We can go to the last topic. It's funny you mentioned Jack Eichel. He's from my hometown. We went to the same high school.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Yeah.
really? What?
Yeah, he was He was trained by Ben for a while.
Yeah.
That's one of the main people I used to saw. Ben, honestly, too, if you want some fun ideas for accessory work, that was the other reason I followed him. He's still on his YouTube channel, has like a huge database of accessory stuff, and very good, like purposeful, like actually good stuff, not dumb stuff that you're doing a one-legged Bosu ball standing bicep curl, like actual good stuff. He had an awesome database of like accessory stuff, and I would use that a lot in personal training. It was like a fun thing when like my clients would they get a new thing like, why did you watch Ben Bruno again this week, didn't you? I'm like, yeah, I did. Got a new thing. So highly recommend if you want some fun ideas, especially like some home gym stuff, because he does a lot of cool stuff with landmine stuff. That 2020 he was I went back and watched a lot of his stuff too. So because he's got a lot of cool things you can do for home gym accessory work.
Yeah.
Nice.
To the last of the movement topic.
Yeah, let's do that one.
Yeah. So like we were talking about, I think before the call started, we were on a podcast with David and us talking about just like general systems and how we look at training. What is your approach? Kind of like the first thing you're looking at. Do you go based on movement and that's how you're kind of basing the programming, or are you looking at more specific programming aspects and then basing changes off of
that? Again, it's going to go based on the athletes I coach now. Most people who come to me have decent movement. Like I don't have that many people coming to me where we're going to have to do like large overhauls with technique. So it depends. I mean, if I was having a lot more new lifters, we might doing more movement constraints, but knowing kind of being familiar, I didn't get to listen to the podcast yet. I have it downloaded, but knowing kind of more of Anas and David's background and kind of relating more back to PRI, I'm probably not as much in the realm as what they're doing in sense of movement. I definitely went down the PRI rabbit hole in 2020, and honestly, it was super beneficial. There's a lot to learn in sense of biomechanics from that, but my one thing that I stopped at a certain point. I was kind of like, okay, I found what I needed, and any further I didn't feel like was going to give me additional benefit. Is how much am I actually going to be able to translate to the lifter, get them to understand in a timely manner, when maybe I could do something else that could expedite that process in a shorter time period. Because PRI, you can get pretty deep into a rabbit hole where it gets pretty complex. So
I think a better way to ask the question might be like, say you have a lifter who squats twice a week, and if both of those sessions are low bar, then they always end up running into pain. But you can do 1 day low bar, 1 day high bar. Would the goal be to figure out how to get them to progress on 1 day low bar, 1 day high bar, or would the goal be to get them to 2 days low
bar? What I would very much use variations to adjust load management to get them to be able to sustain training in the best way possible. That would be my preference, because if they can consistently train without pain, they're going to progress. If it's enough of what they need. Like if obviously they feel terrible and they're getting weaker, not low bar squatting twice a week, that's an issue. But yes, I mean, I don't think you could ever have like a set in stone model for this, but like everyone has different leverages. Like when they squat, it is taxing the primary movers in a different way. And so what you're trying to do is, how can I be able to achieve the highest workload and allow them to recover the best? Because yeah, maybe they can low bar squat twice a week, but then they have to do a lot less workload and they're not going to get stronger from that because it's too little. So it's a way of like going back to kind of bodybuilding, or the attacking weak points, which I think it's a different way to approach it, is how can I distribute the stress in the best possible manner? Because I think that's probably one of those things where like weak point training was correct, but for the wrong reasons. Like I don't think people actually probably have like weak quads necessarily. They just are, they're in positions that overly need the quads to work, and they're leveraged in a way that they can't actually overcome those demands. And so you might have to they're doing things that are biasing away from the quads, like a very hingier squatter, and they have to go more towards the posterior chain. And so I don't think the quads are weak, but they're in a position where they require more work than someone else in a similar position, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So you're supplementing stuff to be able to distribute workload evenly, versus if you just keep letting them do the same things over and over, they're just taxing the same musculature over and over, and there's only so much that musculature can take.
Yeah.
I'm gonna build off of Chris's question and let me know if what I'm saying makes no sense or I phrase it poorly. But say in the example that Chris gave, where uh say someone's doing 2 times low bar squat and they're progressing off of it and then they start hurting, and then you find that you go to the 1 time high bar, 1 time low bar, and they stop hurting and they're still progressing. Do you ask yourself, hey, is it worthwhile to see if we can fix some kind of movement restriction or focus more on that movement realm to get them back to the 2 time low bar because you have a theory of them being able to like tolerate that workload more and kind of progress more? Or are you just gonna be like, okay, well, we settled on the 1 time low bar, one time high bar, even though 2 time low bar has worked before, but we've encountered pain. Would you stick with the 1 time high bar, 1 time low bar, or would you do the opposite? Obviously, it's kind of vague, but
I mean, I would say the majority of times I would stick with the 1 time low bar and 1 time high bar unless I see something that I think is for sure fixable. A lot of things you just gotta like we look at someone and you would just the amount you could actually improve it is so minuscule versus the work you would put in trying to fix it. And is that really worth the time? Or are you even going to see any benefit from it? So, yeah, I would say most of the time, the reason I'm literally shifting in the first place is because I don't think we can get to a spot where we can actually get them doing 2 times low bar and be able to tolerate it. It's to the point where no, I simply think that you can't tolerate it, and no matter what we do, it's probably not going to be something that's going to be beneficial for you.
yeah, for sure. I think that's like kind of going along the line of like, can this person do more when knowing more is likely good? It can kind of be like a almost like tricky, I don't want to say rabbit hole, but like a tricky route to go down where you can kind of get too curious and almost like, I forget what phraseology we talked about before with me, Chris, and Andy when we talked about this question, but like it's almost like you're wondering if more workload can be tolerated when it isn't necessary, if that makes sense. And it's just kind of like there are going to be cases when like that less is more, and like we've seen it like ourselves in plenty of situations. Like I think at one point I had someone progressing off of 3 deadlift a week and we didn't need to do much more than that. We tried to do more and it didn't work and stuff like that. I never really have asked myself that question. It's like, oh, can we work around movement to see if this person can tolerate more with the curiosity of them possibly progressing more, if that makes sense? It's just kind of like a do with what you have kind of situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, I mean, I have way more scenarios now where I'm doing less is better than more is better. Especially like 2017, 2018, it was just all 2016 too. It was just all about volume. All the research was about volume was the key. We need more volume, and that kind of got stuck. That everyone was needing to find ways to do more and more and more, and that can work, but we see less is more work just as much, if not better. Like I think you get to that point where you just do more and more and more, and you're going to have to sacrifice intensity for the volume. So there's always going to give or take there, and like what the stimulus you're wanting is. So, but I mean, I definitely went down I mean, I would say the first 4 years I coached, it was mainly like, oh, I've got to fix technique and fix movement, and that will fix everything I need to. And I think just from experience, there was just so many times we just spun our wheels doing that when you can accomplish way more with an immediate programming intervention. So
I think Brad had similar things to say about his kind of progression where he was just starting out. It was all just like movement, hyper focused on what the rep looks like, just like the movement pattern itself. And then it's just gotten to like, let's just get that good enough into where, there's no big issues with the movement and then program from there.
Brad's a better example to talk about this with because he went pretty far down the PRI rabbit hole. He actually went to I think he got certified and stuff. He went down the rabbit hole, and for him to come around after he was the movement guru, He was kind of like the injury guy before there was like John Song and actual like DPTs, like actually in powerlifting. Like Brad was the guy you went to if you were injured because he was the movement guy. That's why I went to him. And I learned a ton of stuff, but it should tell you with him that if he did all of that and eventually he had to shift away, there's something to that. Because even with me, like he did a lot to improve my movement, but really in hindsight, the issue was for me that I was always doing just way too much. We just did less. And that's what was the biggest thing for me.
Yep.
Would you say that programming is like that one avenue of getting people to progress relative to looking at other things? Like, would you say for the most part you found like the most significant improvements in people's progress by doing some kind of change in programming relative to other things?
Yeah, once you get them to a baseline of technique, like once they get to a baseline of technique, that it goes back to my little and Brad's video on what is good technique. It follows powerlifting rules. You manage your center of mass, and it's in some way maximizing their force output and not taking away from that. Like once you get to that point, it's programming at that point, and then it's just like you got all done with it too. It's trying to limit skill regression. We all have Devin, but we're dealing with it now. There's people who just randomly forget how to lift. Like the technique is great, and just all of a sudden just forget. And that's in any sport. Golf. Oh my God. I played golf yesterday. It was the worst round I played in like 3 years. I'm going to go play golf again today. Probably I'll hit it fine. Won't make any sense. Don't know what I did different, but that's just like at a certain point, it's basically trying to manage skill regression. It's like, okay, we're at a baseline. Let's just not lose this baseline as much as possible. And you're not going to get much out of doing much more. But like a good example, I don't coach too many brand new lifters, but like a good example of when technique overrides programming is Abigail. If you go look at her deadlift from a year ago, when she came to me, I thought she was just not going to be a good deadlifter. It did not look great. I thought she was just not well leveraged for it. That was incorrect. Just no one had taught her how to deadlift before. And now she has it's like a perfection of a sumo deadlift. The programming mattered less for her in that portion than her technique did. But then once we got to a baseline of technique, now the programming matters more. And that's where you get a lot of coaches who just aren't good with technique, and they don't coach a lot of technique, and they still have really successful lifters because once they get to a certain baseline, technical changes aren't really going to make that much of a difference.
Cool. I think that's pretty much everything, unless anyone has anything to add or tack on to something.
I think we got a good time there. But thank you everybody for listening. You can find us on Instagram, Triumph S&P, YouTube, Triumph Strength and Performance, same on Spotify. Steve, I don't know if you really need to be shouting out your Instagram here, but if you want to do some promotion.
I was trying to think of something dumb to promote, but I've got nothing. Yeah, I got nothing fun. I had nothing cool to say.
Yeah. Everyone probably knows where to find.
Everyone go do dog crap.
Yeah.
Everyone go do dog crap right now.
Yeah, 2 pieces. Don't worry about me. You need to go search Ben Bruno and go search latest, like the oldest videos, and go look at all his dog crap stuff and understand what true failure is. That's what everyone's homework is.
Yeah, all right. Thank you everyone for listening.